Are carbs the evil macronutrient the way fat was the evil macronutrient back in the 80s and 90s? I don't think we get into great patterns when we start assuming that one whole macronutrient is evil. So whether that's carbs or I don't think protein has ever been on the naughty list in terms of what we think is healthy, but certainly fat has been. And when we tend to think that way, when we get into sort of all or none thinking about a whole category of calories, what ends up happening is that people often end up with pretty extreme eating patterns that end up being not sustainable or causing some other kind of harm. So for example, when everything went to being low fat, more sugar and more salt tended to creep into products, and things became very highly processed in such a way that often led to overeating and led to a rise in diabetes and obesity rates. You can see like tremendous correlations with that. When we think that carbs, all carbs, are evil and that we have to cut them fully out of our diet, I think there's a few things that happen. One, I think, again, we're setting up a really restrictive eating pattern that's really hard to sustain long term. If you talk to people who've done keto, a lot of people say, I've lost weight with keto. It worked really great for me. I did it for 6 months and then I stopped. And mostly when you ask them why they stopped, it's because it was too hard to continue to do. It really restricted their ability to eat with friends and family, really restricted their food choices. They just felt like they couldn't keep going. And to me, that's not a successful pattern. If somebody loves keto and they love doing it and it works for them, great, but I see very few people who can sustain it for the long term, and therefore it tends not to be something that I recommend. When we talk about carbs too, we have to identify what kind of carbs are we talking about, because that is a huge category of food. Popcorn is a carb, sweet potatoes are a carb, potato chips are a carb, French fries are a carb. Breads and croissants and donuts are carbs, right? Those are all very different foods and they have very different effects on your body. I tend to talk a lot about increasing natural fiber intake for my patients. So eating fiber-rich foods. For the most part, that's going to include fruits and vegetables. It's going to include beans. It's going to include a lot of natural carbohydrate sources that have fiber automatically associated with them. That tends to be great for gut and metabolic health. It increases fullness and satiety. It helps us to feel better and has a lot of anti-inflammatory benefits for our body. But they're carbs. That's very different from eating a diet that has a lot of bread or pasta or foods that have been stripped of their fiber components and are made from processed flours and sugars or otherwise stripped of a lot of nutrients. Those foods are very easy to overeat. They don't often trigger a lot of fullness, so we often just kind of keep going. And a lot of food manufacturers are literally designing foods that we will continue to want to put in our mouth. And a lot of those foods are going to be carbohydrate-rich foods. So it's not as simple as we're going to call all carbs bad or all carbs good. We have to really think, what is the quality of these foods? And, can I eat as minimally processed as reasonable for whatever's going on in my life? That's probably going to be a healthier eating pattern overall than somebody who cuts out complete groups, including our macronutrients like carbohydrates.